So yeah,
UFC 210, Daniel Cormier facing Anthony Rumble Johnson, April 8th, coming up soon. Obviously, big rematch. Co-main event, we've got Musasi versus Chris Weidman. What do we think of this, Lewis?
What do you want to talk about the main event first? Talk about the main. Yeah, I mean, dude,
All right, let's do it.
fucking Johnson, dude. I don't know, man. I think that he's only a very, very, very slight underdog. But there's just something about a guy who's a knockout artist like that, a guy who could end it at any second in the fight, that it's very hard to bet against him. You know, it's really a game of numbers. I feel like if Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson fought 10 times, 6 or 7 of the times Anthony Johnson would knock out Daniel Cormier. You know?
Really? Really? That's
feel
interesting because you do remember, of course, Lewis, in the first round, Cormier took Rumble's hardest punch right on the chin. Yes, he went flying across the octagon, granted. But he got back to his feet and he won that fight.
No, yeah, I know he did. I'm just saying Anthony Johnson has a style to put people out. And I feel like, you know, what Daniel Cormier does is he's going to wrestle you. He's going to wear you down. He's going to, you know, really be a motherfucker to fight against. But at the same time, Anthony Johnson can put you out. And I just feel like it's a game of numbers. He's that dude. He knocks people out.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is his entire game. And that's why Daniel Cormier this week said that Johnson is kind of a one-trick pony. And I guess in some ways he is. I guess, you know, he's not completely a one-trick pony. He out-wrestled Jimmy Manuwa in the first round prior to getting the knockout. That was a good strategy by Johnson. You know, wear down the power striker, use his wrestling. But in terms of being a specialist, he's a specialist when it comes to knockout power. If you look at his record, which I am now, you know, first round knockout after first round knockout, Glover Teixeira, Ryan Bader, Jimmy Manuwa, Gustafsson, Nogueira, the list goes on. That's what he does. But Cormier said he's only got to be careful for 7 minutes because after that, Johnson kind of fades. And, you know, that's kind of true because if you look at the 2 losses recently on Anthony Johnson's record, you got Daniel Cormier, which obviously was I think it was a 3rd round rear naked choke. And as we know, he dropped him in the first round and then DC kind of took him down and ground him out. I hate using that expression, by the way, when it comes to Daniel Cormier, the king of the grind. I fucking hate saying that, but it kind of gets in my head. The loss on Johnson's record before that was Vitor Belfort. Vitor Belfort, UFC 142. And
2012.
Again, say again?
2012.
Yeah, 2012. But even still, if Vitor Belfort can get him down, now bearing in mind this was the juiced up Incredible Hulk version of Vitor Belfort.
Also, Anthony Johnson cutting down and missing weight, which, you know, can definitely have an effect. I have no idea what happened there with that camp, but I'm assuming that he really struggled and there was issues, you know, coming into that fight, how he felt.
No, absolutely. I think he missed weight by something like, I don't know, 15 pounds or something crazy. It was supposed to be at 185, and I think he came in at around 203, 204. So certainly weight-cutting issues. But the point I'm making is that Vitor got out of that first round, and that's Vitor, who everybody knows is a first-round fighter. And as the fight progressed, it went towards Vitor's favor. And the same with the first fight against Daniel Cormier. So it's an interesting fight because if I was Anthony Johnson, I know I could knock DC out on the feet if I get chance. Because I think, and this is no disrespect to Daniel, I think the world of Daniel, and I've got a lot of respect for him as a fighter, but I think on the feet, Johnson's the bigger guy. He's got the bigger reach. He's got the better arsenal of strikes and by far hits harder. He's probably the hardest hitting guy in the UFC. If I was Anthony Johnson, every time I would spar, and this is what I used to do when I first started fighting in the UFC, started fighting wrestlers in America, I recognized that I was at a wrestling disadvantage. I knew fighting guys like Rashad Evans and a lot of wrestlers, because obviously in the UK, we don't have the wrestling pedigree. We don't do it in school. We don't do it in college. So we're always going to be at a perceived disadvantage in the wrestling. I used to always say that wrestling was kind of like a UK or a European fighter's kryptonite. And I always recognize that. So, and this is what Johnson needs to do. He needs to start his sparring on his back. So he needs to fight to his feet each and every time to be able to then get his game plan off, to throw his strikes. If he does that, he should be more than prepared. Of course, work on the takedown defense, work on his conditioning, because being so heavily muscled, he does tend to gas a little bit as the fight progresses. But it's simple as that. Get better at conditioning and be able to get back to your feet. I think if he does that, of course, Rumble does stand a good chance of knocking him out.
Yeah, I'm looking at both of their record here. You got to understand, man. Look at these 3 guys. This is a division that it's like, it really is Anthony Johnson, DC, and Gustafsson, any of these three guys, I mean, they're so impressive, right? I feel like any one of them could beat the other one any given Sunday. And then John Jones was just kind of out there. What a weird thing, man, that John Jones just kind of, I don't want to say mess up the opportunity, because who knows, he might come back and realize his full potential. He was so young. He's still very young. But, like, what a fucking weird thing that John Jones was just by far the best, and he's just MIA now.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. I mean, those three guys are certainly at the top of the division. And if you look at Cormier's record, which I am now 18-1.
It's crazy.
Of course, the only loss coming to John Jones, and it was a good win for John Jones. Other than that, though, we've got to give some props to Daniel Cormier here. I mean, if you look at his record, let's go through Anderson Silva, Gustafsson, Anthony Johnson, lost to John Jones, Dan Henderson, Patrick Cummins, Roy Nelson, Josh Barnett, Antonio Silva, Jeff Monson, because remember, of course,
heavyweight,
he fought at heavyweight. This guy's unbelievable, and he's wrestling second to
none.
none.
And he won the Strikeforce tournament as an alternate, if you remember that. The Strikeforce heavyweight tournament, he came in, and it was a dude that wasn't even really, he was known as like Cain Velasquez's wrestling coach, really.
Yeah, no, he really was. But it's kind of weird because this fight, of course, the light heavyweight title is on the line, but it's almost like the real prize for this fight is who gets to fight John Jones, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, John Jones is cleared to fight now, and the winner of this, of course, will go on to face John Jones in John Jones's much highly anticipated return, and that will obviously do big pay-per-view numbers. And John Jones, I mean, I'm not trying to piss on Daniel Cormier's reputation here, but he's kind of, it's a weird one for Daniel Cormier, because John Jones is still in some people's mind regarded as the champ, because he did beat Cormier, and John Jones was stripped. Now, of course, Cormier beat Johnson, became the champ, so he is the rightful champion, but I guess a lot of people still kind of think maybe that belt should be around John Jones's waist. So it's weird that Daniel Cormier, his entire legacy and reputation as a fighter is somewhat defined by John Jones. So it's unfortunate, but it's just a weird position he's in. He was so dominant at heavyweight, of course, the light heavyweight champion, and he's got this cloud hanging over him of John Jones. He needs to beat John Jones to be not credible, because he's far, he's more than credible. He's the light heavyweight champion of the world, but to truly be accepted by his critics as the light heavyweight champion, he needs to beat John Jones. But to be able to do that, he's got to beat Anthony Johnson. So there's some very interesting fights for Daniel Cormier, but it's a very, very tough road ahead.